All right, what's up, everybody? Coach Mack, Play Fast Football. Been a long time since we've done anything on live, so I figured on a Tuesday night. We are now 4 weeks into the season, so figured tonight would be a good night to kind of check in with everybody. Depending on where you guys are at, you should be, 3 to 4 weeks or at least 2 weeks into your season. So I would think everybody on here is playing football now. So figured tonight would be a good time to kind of check in, see how everybody's doing, talk a little bit about some of the things that we are doing, and then talk a little bit about the things that are going well, the things that we are struggling with a little bit, and where we're trying to go from, the rest of the season to close out the last 6 games, what we're trying to build on, what we're trying to do, where we're trying to get to. All that good stuff now that we are in the middle of September. College football has started now, so probably got some good stuff to talk about with college football. What are the surprises, who's really good, who's not so good. Obviously, in the state of Florida, things are a little bit in a state of disarray right now between Florida and Florida State. So certainly a lot to talk about on a Tuesday night. So figured we'd let it rip. There's no Monday Night Football. College Tuesday Night Football hasn't started yet. So what better time than now? Just put out first video in probably over a month or so with being so busy and everything. Put a video out this morning on YouTube on stuff we're doing with the Jack and our 3-4 package. And each week we kind of expand a little bit more as the kids get a little bit more comfortable in the Jack position. The kid that's playing in the Jack position gets a little bit more comfortable. We start finding different ways to kind of move him around and do some things with him that still fit into our base rules. So put that video out this morning. So figured what better time than to jump on YouTube live than tonight. So we are currently sitting at 3-1. We just lost this past Friday night, 35-28 to one of the best teams in the area, perennial state champion, another private school. It's about 15 minutes down the road from us. So really big game, rivalry game. Had to move the game from our place to their place. We have gotten in Northeast Florida where we are, we have gotten about 18 to 20 inches of rain in the last 2.5 to 3 weeks. Our field is a grass surface. Held on to the game as long as we could because it's a really big game for us and we love our environment, at our field. So, ended up Friday morning having to move it. They have an artificial turf field, so we moved it over to their turf field, which was probably a good call for the safety of the kids and the safety of the playing field because we still have 3 or 4 home games and possibly playoffs after that. So field probably would have been beat up pretty bad if we played that game. So I had to go over and play it at their place. Got off to a 21-7 halftime lead and then ran into some fatigue issues in the second half. We play a lot of two-way players. They do not. Their roster is a little bit deeper than ours. Bigger team than us. Kind of the wear and tear of those bodies on smaller bodies when you're playing both ways. 2 really good receivers, both currently have Power 5 offers. One's committed to Baylor. The senior's committed to Baylor. The kid on the other side has got LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, a bunch of other ones. So, limited them for as long as we could. And then, they kind of wore us down, wore us out a little bit. We, in all those situations, you continue to grow and you continue to learn. And no matter how long you've been doing this job. So we didn't do a good job with our rotations early in the game when we were playing well. We had some guys that we probably could have gave a little bit of a blow to earlier in the game that were playing more offensive reps, to put our offense in position to score the points we needed to score to win the game. So, that's part of the issue with me being on the field. I like being on the field personality-wise. It fits me a lot better. I like being able to make adjustments off of sideline replay stuff. But if I was in a booth and they have a beautiful stadium booth up there where it's indoors. So if I was indoors in the booth, I could probably chart our offense a little bit better and figure out how many snaps our guys are playing. Didn't do a good job of that Friday night. And, some of our guys played more snaps on offense than they normally do. And, we got kind of worn down, started to cramp a bunch. Humidity was still high. It was only about 82 degrees, 83 degrees at kickoff, but humidity was still really high and it was kind of muggy. And you know, we ran into some issues. So maybe if I get back in the head coaching saddle, Nate, I can look you up somewhere and we can hook up. But right now, I'm just a coordinator, so I don't make those calls right now. But I appreciate it. So and you start to learn a little bit. We've got some younger guys, some 10th grade, 6-quarter JV guys that we've got to learn to trust a little bit more in certain scenarios. And the thing that we talked about as a staff, and I talked about with my head coach, is we got to get to a point where we're playing 1 or 2 of them at a time, mixed in with 8 or 9 of our other varsity starters. I think we can survive that way. When we get to the point where we get really tired and 6 of them get on the field, it's kind of tough, to play 6 backups at the same time. We were talking about it today, just going back and forth with practice ideas. And, and most people in traditional practices, your 1s get reps and then your 2s get limited reps, but your 2s come in all together and, you end up playing all your 2s at the same time, trying to get them reps and, however many reps you can get them in your base stuff on offense and defense and, whatever reps you get for your 2s on special teams. And, a more realistic way to do it, it would take more planning as a coaching staff and you would have to devote a lot more time to your practice schedule. But, the more realistic way to do it would be to substitute a few 2s in game-like situations and say, okay, we've got 1 or 2 D linemen that are playing O-line. Let's play one of our starters with 2 of the backups. And then let's play, one of our Mike linebacker plays tight end. So let's play the backup Mike with the starting Will, not the Mike and Will backups at the same time. And if the nickel comes out, let's make sure the starting Mike and Will are in when the nickel comes out. If one of the safeties or the corners have to come out, let's make sure some starters are in around them. So that you keep the ebb and the flow of the practice and those guys learn how to do everything. Because a lot of times when the 2s get in practice, the script changes a little bit. You don't run everything maybe that the 1s run. You run the things that you think the 2s can get accomplished. And then it's just in reality to keep the flow of the practice going and to keep, motivation high, to keep coaches, in a better frame of mind. Because sometimes when the 2s get in, especially with new game plan things and whatever, on a Tuesday, let's say for argument's sake, maybe one of the first days you're getting to look at formations that the other team's running, plays that the other team is running. You might have checks in that week or coverage checks or front checks or blitz checks and things that maybe the 2s don't get enough reps at. And then if they start making mistakes, the practice kind of goes downhill a little bit. But if you could find a way to, very similar to a game, to say, okay, look, all right, like we got 2 backup linemen in, let's keep one of the starters in. The backup Mike's in, let's keep the Will in. The backup Will's in, let's keep the Mike in. It might take a lot more organizational time going into the plan. But I think as far as the continuity of the practice, the reality of the situation, that's really the point we're going to get to in games. The first 3 games that we played, we won each game with a running clock, right? So we got to the 4th quarter, there was a running clock, which also theoretically, when you look at it, we played about half the game in a kickoff classic, and then we only played with the starters 2.5 to 3 quarters the first 3 weeks in each game because it was a running clock in the 4th quarter, so you're winning by 35 points or more. So we haven't had as many game reps. The starters haven't had to play as much. So that conditioning, comes into play a little bit there. So, a lot of factors that go into it. But as a coaching staff, when you lose a big game like that you had a lead in, a big rivalry game, a chance to beat one of the, more prestigious programs in the state of Florida, a name that everybody recognizes, and a name in our area, quite frankly, people probably don't think we should win that game. We won it 2 years ago. Last year, they got us twice, once in the regular season, once in the playoffs. And then we had a chance to win it this year. And then to have it fall the way it fell and to have them kind of take over in the second half and kind of wear us out and have guys cramp out, and not be able to come back in the game and end up with 3 or 4 backups playing. It's just one of those deals where you learn as a coach, right? There's the only way to go through certain things, whether it be game management, offense, defense, special teams, schemes, game plans, whatever it may be. The only way to learn is you got to do it, right? So I feel like it's going to make us a better team. I feel like, we learn from that as coaches now how rotationally how we need to get our players in and out, what we need to do if our guys are playing offense, some guys that we need to get off of kickoff team maybe, or things where the good thing is we have GPS monitors on most of our starters, so we can monitor. You know, one of our guys that played both ways the other night played like 66 snaps and logged over 8,000 yards in distance of total running. And, you know, so, you know, with those GPS monitors, you can track volume and what you're doing. So we've just got to do a better job of rotating guys in. But you don't, you know, the only way to learn that lesson is to learn through a valuable experience like that. So Miami, I really don't know, to be honest with you. It's changed so many times in the last 3-4 years, from rural to suburban to 5A to 4A. I know that we're probably old school. We're somewhere in that 5A classification. In Northeast Florida, I think our crossover, we run into Rains. Played Bowls this past Friday night. They were in our district the last 2 years. They're smaller than us now with the new classification, so won't see them in the playoffs again. But I think I don't know what the classifications are. Are we 5A or something like that? I been doing this for so long and it's changed so many times in Florida that I kind of get confused, but we're in whatever classification Rains is in. So I think it's 5A maybe again, or, you know, last year it was whatever it was, 3A Metro or something like that. We fell in Metro because we're technically in Duval County. But, you know, again, games like that, I think, make you better. You got to learn from them. The kids got to learn from them. Very physical team, good skill players, really good quarterback that throws it well and manages the game and the RPOs and the things that they do really well. So, you know, I think in general, that situation, I feel like, you know, sitting at 3-1, honestly, I feel like that game does us 100 times more than the 3 running clocks. And you know, it's good to go out and win games the way you're supposed to win them. And if you have teams that you should be able to handle, it's good to go out and handle your business. It's good for the kids to play the way they need to play, you know, week in and week out. So to see us compete, and the sad thing is we had a chance to win, put ourselves in position to win, and couldn't finish. But, you know, with that being said, with the results that we've had the first 3 weeks and then the results from Friday night, I think the changes we've made on defense are working for us. We're basically more of a 3-4 scheme now, playing a lot of the same split field coverages we always do. There's some adjustments to it, but, you know, we're kind of still playing some tight front, which ends up being, you know, versions of mint stuff because we send our jack weak side outside linebackers a rusher probably 85% of the time. And we do that because that's his skill set. He's not an off the ball player. He's more of an on the ball player. So, you know, those changes have worked. I think when you look at the results through the first 3 games with the starters, we gave up 9 points, I think, with the starters in 3 games and 21 points total. I think we gave up 10 or was 11 or 12 with the JV, or no, probably 2 scores with the backup kids in the fourth quarter with the running clock. So I think we gave up 12 with them, and then you know, 9 through the first 3 games with the starters, and then I ended up giving up 35 on Friday night. When again against them really is not terrible. You know, Rains is probably one of the best teams in our classification in the state, and they scored 22 or 24 on them. They scored 42 on Trinity Christian. So, you know, 35 to Bowls is really not that bad for us. The problem is we gave up 7 in the first half and, you know, had ourselves in position to win the game and just didn't get it done. So, you know, the defense has been good to us. What we're trying to do has been good to us. You know, putting our kids in position to do the things that they can do well, trying not to get too crazy with the game plans, trying not to get too exotic with what we're doing. We're trying to find ways to get our jack involved. And now that film is out there, we're trying to find different places we can bring the jack from, so that if everybody's trying to, you know, set runs to the jack, or if they're trying to set pass protection to the jack, trying to find ways to bring him from different positions without impacting the guys behind him too much, trying not to change our run fits too much. We're pretty good at inside backers. So I want those kids to be able to, you know, not to be cliche, but I want those kids to keep playing fast and to fit runs and to be downhill and to play aggressive. So, you know, just trying to find ways to wrinkle in where we're bringing a jack from that fits what we do, and trying to get that kid to be active and play to his skill set, and doing a pretty good job on the back end. Kept everything inside and in front of us for the most part. think we gave up a double move for a touchdown and an RPO glance for a touchdown. But for the most part, with two very productive Power Five receivers, we did okay on the back end. Our safeties are playing pretty well right now. So, all in all, I'm happy with where we are. Obviously, you get to this point of the year, you play a physical game like that, injuries start to take a toll and guys start to get banged up. So it's, really, really important for us to continue to keep building depth of what we're trying to do, where we're trying to get to, find guys that can add value to the defense and that can get into games earlier. So, that's part of what you do. That's why you do it. And, but again, right now if you would have told me that we'd be where we were after the first 3 weeks and then have a chance to win that game, only giving up 7 points in the first half. If you would have told me that when we made the change to the defense, then I would have said that it was, a worthwhile change and a very successful move. So, we got to keep building on it. We got to keep working to find ways to come on. Oh. Sorry, I had to let the cat out. We got to keep working and building on top of our base packages and what we're doing with the jack and how we're playing certain formations, 12 personnel. We got a big dose of that Friday night, a lot of 12 personnel, big body, two tight ends and multiple 12 personnel sets. And, a lot of downhill runs, some gap stuff and, some RPO deals that were really good. So they do a good job. They're well coached, good team, good players. So, I think it's going to make us a better team in the future. And now we got to rally and get ready to play another game, play a really good team this week. That throws it a bunch. So, I feel good with where we are on defense right now. I feel good with the things we've been doing. Pairing together what we're doing with the jack and where we're bringing them from and then how we're trying to play base coverages behind it. And then, some of our drop 8 deals where the jack has to be a dropper. The issue that we're having with that right now is he's not playing runs from off the ball very well. Again, when we made the change, the player that we're playing at jack was a 2-year running back. He's been with us since he was a freshman, but hasn't really played defense. He's been a tailback for 2 years, and we got ourselves another good tailback last year that started for us as a freshman. And instead of him kind of losing reps on offense as a tailback, we decided that we were going to change our defense and do things that he can do. He's about 6'1", 195, basketball player, baseball player, really good athlete. So moved him to the jack linebacker. So he's only started 4 games for us there. He continues to get better every week, but off the ball, he's struggling a little bit. So anything that we do where he's off the ball, he's just not as aggressive in the run game. And he's okay in coverage for the things we ask him to do. He's a curl flat dropper. He's a vision and break guy and some zone pressures. So we don't do a ton with him in coverage, but from what we've seen so far, he's not as good in the run game off the ball. So doing way more things with him on the ball, trying to get him involved to play to his skill set. And really, as a coach or a coordinator on either side of the ball, special teams, doesn't really matter what you do. Whatever phase of football it is, you got to find a way to take the kids that have certain skill sets and you've got to use things schematically that are conducive to their skill set, right? So whether it's something that you want to do for your system or something you want to do, schematically, if the kid doesn't do it well, then you're kind of banging your head against the wall. You need to do the things that the kids do well. So he's an on-the-ball player, way better player on the ball. Basically gets us, we almost in general, I know we say we're 3-4, but a lot of the stuff we do, we end up being 4 down because he rushes a bunch. And we've got our change-ups built in. We can bring the nickel from the field and drop him. We bring him from the field and we bring him from the boundary and different places. And then, he's involved in some pressures and then he's a dropper in some pressures. So I think we have enough things now that film is out and we're 4 games in. I think we have enough that we do with him, that makes it tougher for guys to game plan, where he's coming from. Yes, you might know he's coming, but you don't exactly know where he's coming from. And we've changed up coverages enough behind that I think we've got enough on film now to make it tough for people to prepare. So, each week you just continue to work and you try to get your package better. You try to get your package to evolve. And like I said, the one thing we're trying to do this year is each week we're trying not to get too crazy with game plans to where the kids have to make adjustments all week. And we're trying to keep things within the realms of what we do within our base schemes. And, we're trying to get the kids as many reps as possible. And we're trying to do similar things over and over again so we can master those techniques and figure out our practice plans and figure out what we need to work on and where we need to get better and how that fits. And even our practice plans every week, they're a work in progress also. We don't just go out and say, hey, Monday's this, Tuesday's that. We have an idea of what we need to do, within our schedule on Mondays, and Mondays have a certain look to them and Tuesdays have a certain look to them, but we're constantly changing periods and changing things that we do based on the opponent and based what we need to work on that week. And then based off our results in the game, trying to figure out technically, fundamentally, if there's periods, whether they be half line or, whatever, pattern matching or pressure periods, whatever it may be, trying to find ways that we can create periods that make us better as a football team, right? As a coach, that's what you're trying to do. Each week you're trying to get better as a football team. So feel good about the start, feel good about where we are. District play starts in 2 weeks. So got to try and get back on the right side of things this Friday and jump into district play, hopefully at 4-1 and with, most of our team healthy and where we are banged up or where we are struggling a little bit. Younger guys got to step up. The message this week to those guys was, I know you're a 2 or a 3 or you don't get as much time as you think, but now when you're in, you got to be able to do the things that we need to do. There can't be a drop off or a significant drop off from the starter to you. So that's always, to me, even when I was playing, I think that's the toughest thing is if you're not a starter playing that next man up role, it's hard to stay motivated. Sometimes you got to pay attention to meetings. You got to know the game plan, but you don't get as many reps. So a lot of your reps are mental reps. But Friday night was a perfect example of that you never know when your number is going to be called. And all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 guys that got to step up and play. And, you would hope that you can finish games like that off with some backups in, but just didn't get it done. So got to continue to work and get better at those things. So I'm also doing kickoff and punt block and field goal block. So a little bit more on my plate this year. I got off to a rough start in our opener in our classic game. The opening kickoff got returned for 90 yards. So when the head coach gives you kickoff responsibilities and the first kickoff of the season goes for 90 yards and a touchdown, not a great feeling. Had to make some adjustments schematically and then personnel wise, and had to work on some different deals with the kicker to figure out what we can really do well and how we're going to protect that unit. So it's been 4 games in the season. It's been really, really good. Some of the changes we made schematically and then personnel wise, kids have been playing really hard on kickoff. So, and I kind of enjoy doing it. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more to prepare for. I have more film to watch now and more scout cards to make and more things to draw up and our playbook each week to get guys ready. And I got to worry about depth charts on those units. So, it's definitely more work for me. It's definitely a lot more going on, but I like the schematics of it. I like different things that you can do to protect your kickoff unit, different things you can do to try and create plays on kickoff, try and flip field and get field position. Whether that be covering deep kicks or whether that be, skies or squibs or doing things to kind of protect the kids on the field and protect the kicker. So to me, it's a lot of fun. If you could kick it out of the back of the end zone, that would be awesome. Schematically, there's not a lot involved there, but statistically, analytically, it makes you a better football team. If teams are starting every drive at the 20 and you don't have to cover, and then usually you can not have to play starters because you're not going to cover, and guys don't get too banged up playing specials because by the time they avoid the front line before any of the major collisions happen, the whistle's already being blown because it's a touchback. So, those things are, again, they kind of, it's new for me. I always, as a head coach, I had to be on top of special teams, but I never really technically was quote unquote in charge of certain things. I was kind of always trying to delegate those assignments and then stay on top of them. But that's been going well. Punt block, we haven't had too many opportunities. We almost got one against our week 2 opponent, I think. But, I think we played a shield team. Tough to get after that, depending on their splits and their operating time. So haven't given up the ball on special teams on the ones I'm in charge of. So, we've handled punts. We haven't touched any that we shouldn't touch. We've done a decent job teaching what the rules are on punt return. So, it's one of those deals that we're not doing anything great. We haven't blocked a punt yet. We did get one back on kickoff. We skied a kick that the other team couldn't field. So we did get +1 there. So, solid in those phases. Yeah, Miami, it'd be interesting to see if that makes its way. The interesting thing to me after the first 2 weeks of the NFL, um, that's different than the preseason, is I think the analytics are now telling guys in the NFL that it's almost worth it to kick it into the end zone and give the other team the ball at the 30. And that must be based on charting returns when you don't get it to the end zone. And those guys are so statistically driven, analytically driven. I'm seeing way more kicks that guys are just kicking out of the back of the end zone and giving the other team the ball at the 30. And that leads me to believe that through the preseason and then the first week of NFL games, that a lot of the balls that were being fielded and returned were probably coming past the 30, based on the new rules and how you have to cover those things. So, it's interesting to me now when you watch a lot of these NFL games, you see guys just teeing it up. In the preseason games, all I saw were skies and pooches and maybe some squibs, things where the ball was going into that new landing area and you were trying not to get it into the end zone because touchbacks go to the 30 now, not the 20 or the 25. So, it's one of those deals where now analytically, when I watch, and if you guys haven't been studying it or looking at it, watch NFL games this weekend and see how many times teams just go ahead and choose to kick the ball into the end zone and give the offense the ball at the 30. And that tells me that the analytics are telling those guys that, the drives that start at the 30 are ending up with less points, are less successful than the drives that are starting beyond the 30. So and whether it's saving themselves, some potential injuries covering if they know they're going to kick it out of the back of the end zone. But that was interesting to me with the kickoff scheme in the NFL was we thought we were going to see all these new returns and all these new ways to kick the ball. And, kicker's going to have to work on all these different kicks now to get it in the landing area. And more games I watch now, they're just actually kicking touchbacks into the end zone. So, it's interesting to see how that plays out with new dynamics of those schemes, but maybe it works its way into high school. I don't know. Probably not a bad deal if it did avoid some of those collisions that happen down the field. But then also, I think the way it's set up with those 5-yard buffer zones with guys not being able to get running starts, I think personnel wise, who you would play on those teams change. I think you could actually get more O linemen, D linemen involved when they don't have to drop 20 yards and you don't see as many onside kick opportunities. So I would think that the personnel would, if it made its way into high school, how you personnel it, who you could use on that team would change a bunch because of the rules. And then, it'd be interesting if they changed it to where maybe they move kickoffs up, in high school and maybe you kicked off from the 50 and you had the landing area rules. But, any of those things, I think, if it's better for the safety of the game, great. If it changes the game schematically and it makes people learn new things, and I think that's awesome also. Any question is good, Gumby. Everybody has basic questions. Hopefully I can give you a basic answer and not something drawn out or something that'll help you. How's everybody else that's on here doing? Is everybody healthy? Season off to a good start? Stuff you're doing schematically, working, not working? Is there anything you're looking at college-wise or anything that you're seeing that you're trying to do? Off-season stuff, clinics, anything that you learned that's going well? Is it really all good, Joe? Your text messages say that it's not all good. Would we go from flexbone triple option to whatever week 2 and now wing T week 3? Isn't that the joy of high school football? So from an offensive perspective, tagging would be, having base plays where there's a tag for 1 or 2 individual players, or there's a tag added on, to a play. So like if if you consider run pass options or RPOs and you've got a base run called, so let's say you're running power or split zone or something like that, and then you tag a route concept to the front side where the quarterback's going to read off somebody, and maybe you can run that same base run play. So let's say it's split zone, but you've got 2 to 3 ways that you can tag the route concept for the RPO. So you would add the tag onto the run call, and if you're calling split zone and you're running, let's just say glance by 2, fin by 1, and you tag that, and then the next time you're running a stick concept or you're running, a sit down hitch by 2 and a vertical by 1, that would be a tag. Tagging routes in the passing game, if you had a concept and then you tagged an individual route, to where maybe there was one slight change that you tagged, you could tag protections, for the back or for somebody else. It's basically things that off of your base play calls, you're tagging something to it to communicate something different to somebody in the concept, right? So usually on a perimeter, on the back end, usually don't tag a ton of things. For the O lineman, a tag for the O lineman might be something like an insert call on zone. So maybe you're running like zone insert, you're tagging the fullback or the tight end to insert, which means the guys on the backside have to lock it and not run their traditional zone rules. So like that run tag might change rules on the backside of whatever you're doing on inside zone. So, those would be instances of tagging things in a call, as far as calls are concerned with what you might tag into a call. It's kind of simple. It's ways of getting some variation into play calls without changing the play call, or, sometimes like I know like for option teams, sometimes maybe if you are running, some type of option play that's a down block theory, and all of a sudden you're getting 4 eyes that you want to arc block, coaches always go back and forth and say, is that a different play? Or do we run that blocking scheme and tag the front side tackle to arc? That would be an example of tagging something, on offense in those purposes. So hopefully that helps you with as far as play call tagging. I think there's some people who use the term tagging certain things in film, certain things on huddle. But as far as tagging play calls or whatnot, that would be offensively things that you might do. So I might tag a route concept to change the RPO version of split zone, or, I might tag the fullback sometimes to where I might run split zone, and then I might tag a bluff call to it to where we're going to bypass the end and arc him to a support player or a backer, and the quarterback's now going to read the end. So you could tag that. So those would all be instances of how you would tag things on offense. So hopefully that helps, Gumby. Hopefully that answer helps you. Yeah, but like my buddy Joe's talking about that high school football is kind of this conglomeration of everything, right? So very rarely in college or the NFL, very rarely do you go from, week 1 flex bone. Now in college, you'll see it sometimes, but like week 1 flex bone, week 2 spread, week 3 wing T. Like there's usually nothing that drastic or that dramatic. In or out, Mango. There's usually, nothing that drastic in college. Obviously, there'll be some flex bone teams. There'll be some different versions of offense. In the NFL, everything's almost the same week in and week out. So, in high school football, as a high school coach, you see so many things, and you got to hope that your scheme can answer most of those things. But usually in any defensive scheme, there's going to be slight adjustments you have to make to formations or different styles of offenses, how you're playing triple option, and then how you play wide split spread stuff, and then how you're going to choose to play wing T stuff. So hopefully your base defense has enough rules in there to get you through. But every week you're going to have wrinkles, adjustments, and game plans, and that's the tough part. Is just when you think you got the kids playing well, you play an offense that you haven't seen before, and maybe it's double tight, full house, 3-back stuff, and you've got to make some wrinkles, and then it slows kids down when they're playing really well. So it'd be nice to have, kind of the version of the NFL stuff where week in and week out, almost everything's the same. There's some slight nuances to it, but the structures are pretty much the same week in and week out. In high school, it's every week is a new story. So makes it kind of interesting. Corbett decided to catch this and tries to study gun, rocket stuff, and more generally orbit motion stuff has been really grabbing me the last. Yeah, there's some really good in college. There's some really good motion stuff going on where motion in NFL too. They've always had it, but like motioning guys to get extra blockers in the run game using those wide F bodies, different types of motions to get them into the run game, and then receivers, a lot of different orbit motions and return motions and twirl motions and so many different things they're doing to dictate coverages and get you to spin or rock and roll and then come back the other way. And, those guys are cutting edge with everything they're doing. So that stuff, a lot of the orbit stuff, return stuff, twirl stuff, and guys do it different ways. I watched first week, I was watching Vanderbilt, Virginia Tech, and Vanderbilt within their option stuff, similar to the way New Mexico was doing some things a couple of years ago, or like the Willie Fritz style that was at Sam Houston State, and then a little bit at New Mexico, and then at Tulane a little bit. But, a lot of option stuff, but getting receivers involved. And they would bring receivers across in flat motion in front of the quarterback. He would actually cross the center to try to get you to spin or rotate your coverages. And then he would return behind the quarterback as a pitch player. So it wasn't traditional orbit stuff or twirl stuff. It was like flat across. But then as soon as he crossed the quarterback's face, he would kind of open away from the line of scrimmage and then return as a pitch phase or a triple phase back to that side. So, the college guys do a really good job on offense, and they make it really tough on defensive coordinators. Yeah, the interesting thing about that, Rob Dog, is that you'll play some guys who, it might be flavor of the week, but you'll also play some guys that, like, I played teams where their offense week by week kind of mimicked your offense or the scout offense that they were facing. We see it a lot on JV where you'll play a team and their varsity does one thing, and then you go to play the JV and they do something different. And if, a lot of times if it's a JV team that you're not playing that week, you can guarantee that their JV offense that week was probably the varsity offense that they're going against, because those kids were the scout group. So what they choose to do is they choose to take those kids and they use them as a scout team, and then they go ahead and run that as their offense, that JV game. So I've seen a lot of stuff like that. I've seen flavor of the week where either teams can't figure it out or they don't have a base offense, and every week they change because it's the changes that keep them in games. If they don't think they can execute, maybe they don't have the talent, the size, or whatever it may be. So, each week they come out in something new, to try and throw the defenses off. But the more you see stuff like that, the more, you kind of figure out early on, it may give you some issues if you hadn't practiced against it and you hadn't seen it, but they haven't worked it that much either. So if it's something they've never done, there's not, they've got a couple base formations and base plays. And once you see those, that's pretty much probably all they can do. Now there are some teams that practice year round different structures, and they're a little bit better at some of those things. There was always, some teams that had single wing packages, and if they had injuries or if they had issues with their offense, they could always jump into a single wing package. They carried it every week. They carried 4 or 5 plays, and they could run them at any time. And it might have been a short yardage deal, but maybe one week it was, a bigger part of their offense. So there are a bunch of people that do that. But there are also some people on both sides of the ball that it becomes flavor of the week and they can't find an identity, and they're trying to figure out, because at the end of the day, what's our end goal? Our end goal at the end of the day is to win games, right? And it'd be nice to win games with systems and schemes that stay consistent. But a lot of times in high school with the varying talent levels and, who you're playing against, there's going to be times where, you've got to do some things and you've got to change some things. And got a buddy of ours, myself and Joe Delgaze that's on this thread. And, he's got a system. He was a college defensive coordinator at the Division II level, really good football coach. And he's coaching this year, and he doesn't have the talent to play that system, and they're getting kind of beat up. And, we had a conversation the other day that there comes a time where if that system is not working, well, then that year you may have to make some wrinkles that you don't necessarily love and maybe you don't agree with, but you've got to find a way to keep the kids on the field competitive, right? So to keep teaching your scheme to kids that can't run it and to get your brains beat in every week, um, just to say that's your system is not successful either. So as a high school coach, you got to be able to improvise and adjust and make changes. And, some guys do it week to week. Some guys, you know, whether or not you can be successful over the long term, I don't know if you can be successful that way over the long term unless you just are more talented than everybody and you have a bunch of freaks running around. But maybe, one of the things I told the guy was maybe if you like your JV kids, then maybe your JV runs your system and you try to teach it to them for the future. And on varsity week to week, you're pressuring, you're doing things different, whatever it is, or wrinkling your system, because you got to find a way to stay in games. You got to find a way to compete. That's what it's all about. I've been in situations where I've been fired as a head coach twice. And so, if you're in a job where results don't matter and you're not going to get fired as long as you don't do anything wrong, then God bless you at places like that. But, if you're in Florida and people want results and you go 3-7 or 4-6, you might get fired. So you can't sit there and tell principals and ADs, they don't, you would think if they're athletic or, minded or orientated, it doesn't take a genius to walk out to a field on Friday night and figure out which team is better. I mean, it's usually not that hard in high school. You can kind of decipher that in warmups. Now schematically or coaching wise, who's better is different, but in warmups, when guys get off the bus, you can kind of walk out there and look like, one team looks like Michigan, one team looks like, Michigan School of the Arts. Like it's not hard to figure out, but for some reason, sometimes, you get to places where principals and ADs don't use common sense. They don't figure out what's going on. A good AD would figure out what's being taught. A good AD would figure out like what you're doing year round with your program and see that you're putting a ton of time in. Other ones are just going to look at results and say, we want to go in a different direction. And that's the nature of the beast. So it is what it is. But, while you're in that season, you got to try and do things to win games because it may mean your job, right? You can't sit on a system. If people are expecting results, you can't sit on a system and say, all right, no, we're going to build this thing. We're going to build this thing because they pull the plug. You don't get a chance to build it. So I started as a GA in college on the same staff as Joe Delgaze. He was a position coach of mine one year, coordinator at the place I was at. And then right from there as a GA, we were both, he still lives on Long Island. We were both Long Island guys, Northeast football, small school guys. And there's not a lot of big time opportunities to make a living doing that in the Northeast. Unless, you're at in that area, you'd have to be, I guess some of the guys at Stony Brook might do okay now, but you'd have to be Rutgers. You'd have to be some of those, places where, guys can make that much money. Most of the D2, D3 guys, it's tough in the Northeast to live off of that money. So did it as a GA, then went back to high school. And then once I got into high school, the thing, if you don't know, if you follow football, but you don't follow the coaching profession, I did almost get you fired, but I probably bailed you out of it a couple times too. So, it's one of those deals where college profession is a lot about who you know, and you got to hook up with the right guys. And, if you played for somebody and they're big time, that helps. If you recruited somewhere and they go big time, that helps. But in the small school ranks where guys aren't jumping all over the place, springboard jobs, springboarding themselves from D3 to D2 to 1AA and upping the pay. If you get stuck living in New York with Division III pay, you're making $40,000 as a Division III football coach in New York. That's not going to fly very long. So tough place to kind of break into, becoming a good time. Usually you got to be a GA at a place and hook on with the right people. They've got to get promoted and elevate themselves. You got to meet people, you got to socially network and meet people. And a lot of times in college and the NFL, it's the same cycle of guys. They just get regurgitated to different places. You get a couple guys here and there that get a shot and their staffs can come with them. But most of the time the turnover ends up being a guy that was fired from one place and he's at another place. He was fired here, but now he's an offensive coordinator there. And, with so many arrows being shot from the outside, guys that want they don't want arrows being shot from the inside, so they bring their people with them, right? So it's more about. I never knew this going in. I figured it out the hard way. Um, I kind of never went into the business world being from New York. I didn't like the Wall Street scene. I didn't like the business scene, so I never got into it. And the more I find out about when I learned about football is it's just like the business scene. It's all about who you know. It's not about what you know all the time. Um, you can do a great job and win a bunch of games and do things, but if you don't know the right people, you're not going to get promoted. So a lot of the high school guys that end up getting hired at colleges, and you hear a lot of those stories, the Gus Malzahns of the world, and those are either people that are at places that are winning state title after state title, and somebody gives them a chance, or they've got so many Division I players every year that they build a relationship, and then guys hire them because they think they can recruit that area as a high school coach because they know everybody. So there's certainly a lot of Cinderella stories about small school guys. Chip Kelly made it out from small, Division II, and there's a lot of guys that have made it out, but there's more. There's probably more failures or stories of guys that just stayed D3, and it's not a failure by any means. If you can survive on that pay, with wherever you live, then more power to you, right? Because you're doing what you love and you can survive. So it's more about the economics of it. And once I did get a chance, 10, 12 years into my career, had an opportunity, once or twice to go coach Division II football, and would have had to move. The salary was about the same as what I was doing in high school. So at that point, and then once you have a family and kids and stuff like that, like you got to weigh out the positives and the negatives of, yeah, it's college football, but it's not, the economics are not much different. It's going to be more hours. I got to recruit, and I'm not getting paid more than I am in high school. So I might as well just enjoy myself in high school. So, it depends, Bama, on what kind of cover two they're playing. Do they have a pole runner for three? Can you attack the middle of the field if they don't drop anybody with three vertical? Can you then, if you're running three vertical and they don't have the Tampa 2 pole runner, can you then exploit the guy who's got a midpoint, 1 and 2 vertical if three's ripping up the middle? How do they handle that? So it depends on the type of cover two they're playing, how they're trying to play it, how the corners are playing it. Are they good at rerouting? Can a hook players inside or hook curl players inside? Can they get their hands on people vertically, and can the corner jam funnel and get guys sent in so that the midpoint players are, you're going after cover two, the holes deep down the middle and deep down the sideline. Those are two of the immediate holes. Usually there's 5 underneath droppers. It's tougher to attack some of that stuff underneath. There's still some spacing theories you can use, but, traditionally speaking, if you're dropping 7 guys, cover 2 has 5 underneath players and cover 3 has 4 underneath players. So your spacing deals are better versus cover 3. But, there's certainly ways you got to go after the outside holes. You got to go out after the hole down the middle. You got to see how they play. If you're a 3-by-1 team, you got to see how they play 3 down the middle. And so, nothing in particular that I would say drawn up on paper, but you got to know the areas of the field, and against cover 2 you need to attack, and then you got to know how teams play their version of cover 2 and then go after it from there, right? But usually more underneath players than there are deep players, so you got to exploit those deep areas of the field, and usually those teams try and take that away either with a mic or a safety or somebody that runs. If 3's vertical, they got a player that carries 3 vertical like Tampa 2 and that shit. So there's a bunch of different variations. You got to see how good they are at playing it. If you can run the ball, especially in high school with hash marks, if teams are trying to play cover 2 and the corner's a force player, if you can run the ball at that stuff, then corners are really far away. Stand-up screens and things, if you can get numbers underneath, if you can get the corner blocked, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different things. But that usually is game plan week to week and different things that you can do to exploit that stuff. I reference Madden in some ways. I don't really use plays off of Madden or NCAA football. But I use it as a reference point sometimes, like if we're playing zone stuff and I'm trying to get guys to figure out how, they're going to drop hook to curl a flat. And I might reference Madden and say, hey, when you're playing that and you get these yellow circles or blue circles that tell you where the linebackers are going to drop and it's a zone. And then when it's man to man, you get different, lines or arrows or whatever it may be. We talk to guys. I reference it. I don't use it as a playbook. I don't use things out of there. to say that, hey, we're going to play Engage 8 this week. Like, I don't use it that way, but because our kids are so, abreast of all that stuff, and because they play video games, if you can get anything out of it that you can use, then I certainly think it helps. But I'll talk more in terms of like, hey, have you ever played Madden and seen this in a playbook? Okay, well, that's what we're doing. Like Tampa 2, the kids know what Tampa 2 is in Madden. They don't know what it is as coverage, but they know what it is in NCAA or Madden. So that, if you had to play Tampa 2 and you had to explain, okay, so when you see Tampa 2 and you see that third circle deep in the middle, that's telling you that guy's playing deep middle. Well, that's what we're doing. You're the vertical 3 player. If 3's not vertical, you can hang in a high hook. But if 3's vertical, you got to run the pole with them or cover them deep down the middle of the field to alleviate that seam so that the safeties can play a little bit wider, right? So things like that that you can decipher from Madden or college. But in general, I don't really use it as a playbook, or I don't draw or get plays from Madden or NCAA. I think they've made those games better. I haven't played either one. I don't think I played Madden or NCAA football in probably 10 years, but based on my buddies that still played, I still have a PlayStation 5, but I choose not to play Madden or college. But, my buddies that play it and then the kids at school that play it, they all talk about how much better the game is. And now they're doing kids come in and tell us about RPOs that you can run and zone read with the quarterback that you can run and option stuff that you can run. So, I think those games are a little bit more realistic now, but, in my opinion, if kids would play more actual football and less Madden and NCAA, we'd be in a much better place. But hell, if Madden or NCAA helps kids learn something, then I'm all about it, right? If that's what they're doing and we know they're doing it, well, then if you can figure out a way to tell kids that that's the same as this in Madden or it's the same as that. I do talk about personnel with our kids. When we talk about personnel stuff, I always talk about, I'm like, all right, well, when you pull up your playbook with a certain team and you see 3-3-5 and you see 46 bear and you see, all these other structures and personnel groupings, well, that's what that means. And then they go, oh, coach, I never really knew that. I knew there were different packages, but that's what, that's 3 down linemen, 3 backers, and 5 secondary players. And that's, 4 down linemen and 3 backers and 4 secondary players. And that's, so all those different packages are, a way that you can teach kids. Yeah, I don't know, Bo, how they're going to fix that. I think they've tried to make it more realistic, but I don't know how they're ever going to fix the actual blocking intricacies on the game and whether or not guys can read or beat reach blocks and down blocks and guys that are squeeze and spill and whatever. And especially like when you're grabbing those guys, you got to kind of, if you're playing with a 3 technique or something, usually you're just trying to make a move with your controller or your analog, or you're picking moves with the analog or the buttons that you can make with the D lineman. But I don't know how many guys sit down to play 3 technique with a joystick and go, all right, down block, I'm going to squeeze this. If I get a reach block, I'm going to work to beat the reach. Pass set, here's my pass rush plan. It's still a video game at heart, so it's more realistic than it's ever been, but still a video game at heart. So, going on an hour here now, guys. So, again, with everybody, I have school in the morning. I've got practice that I got to get ready. I've got film that I got to watch from practice. So, glad I could get back on here to do some YouTube live stuff. Glad all you guys could participate in it tonight. Hope your seasons are going well. If you're winning, I hope you continue to win. If you're losing, I hope you get it turned around. I hope weather and fields and everything else is good for you guys. And as we continue on, I'll try and check in as many times as I can with some live stuff, probably on Tuesday and Wednesday nights with, thank you, Goat. Appreciate it. But, and thanks for the comment on one of the videos today. I appreciate that as well. Try to check in as much as I can. I'm still trying to do some Patreon. One of the things I do on Patreon, if you've ever been on that site, it's a subscription site, and I kind of hate promoting that site because everything I do on YouTube is free. But the difference on that site with Patreon is week to week, I take you through actual game film of us playing stuff, and I talk you through the calls. And so sometimes the videos that I might do on a whiteboard, you can actually see us playing things, and I can take you through the good, the bad, the ugly of what we're playing. So I still do those every week. I do drive-by-drive film work from our games. It's us playing. It's me calling defenses, and then it's me taking you through how we played well, how we played poorly, what we struggled with, what we should have done different. So I still do those, kind of once a week on Patreon. So I still got that going on. And then I want to jump on YouTube Live as we go through the season and talk about what we're doing, we've got some deals, some more change ups with the Jack this week that we're working on. So look forward to talking about some of those deals and, adding to our third down package with our nickel dime group. So hopefully as the year goes on, we'll have more film to look at and more things to study. If those things work for us, if they don't work, then you'll probably never hear about them. But, just trying to evolve and grow with the package each week and trying to get our kids better and trying to make it tough on opponents, the game plan for us. That's what it's all about. So, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate everything you guys do for me and Play Fast Football on a Tuesday night. You guys are awesome. You're sick to be on a YouTube Live at 9:00 on a Tuesday night, but that's why I do what I do, and that's why Play Fast is what it is, because you guys are absolutely nuts. Yeah, Joe, send me a text at 6:00 with what's driving you nuts or how you're going to lose your mind tomorrow. And on my way to work, I'll text you back. Voice text, not type text. But appreciate everything you guys do. Stay healthy. Hope you guys are winning. Hope things are going well. Hope you get it turned around if you're not winning. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast. Hopefully, I'll see you next week.